Thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to come here this morning and share some of my ideas and experiences. And it's a great honour to give the Bryant Stokes Oration. I'm sure many of you in the room know Professor Stokes. I can't call him Bryant still. And a great contributor to his field of neurosurgery, but with the capacity to stand back and look at the system as a whole. Look at the community, look at the system, the health system we provide for that community, and look at how it can be enhanced. And he's undertook so many roles, and I remember coming across him on the board at the South Metro and all different places as Director General, and always active and wanted to make a difference. And so, as I was thinking about what I could share with you today, I thought I'd talk about the people that made, as the journey goes forward, that quest for Scarless healing possible. So this is where my journey starts. I come from a Yorkshire coal mining village. My father went down the coal mine as a 14-year-old, and he was focused on education to give us all the choice, my brothers and my sister, the choice of getting up in the morning and enjoying what you do. And so I feel extraordinarily privileged because I get up in the morning every day and I enjoy what I do still. And as I started my journey, I was clearly somebody who could never do one thing at once, but I put this image in there because there were people that inspired me, even as a young girl. One was Margot Fontaine and Nureyev. I actually saw them dance at Sadler's Wells when I was a medical student. A memory box moment. Seeing the best in the world do anything is a memory box moment. And running, I used to love the feel of the wind in my face as I was sprinting. And in my village, and the village next door, there were two women that had been to the Olympics, Mexico and Tokyo. They got on an aeroplane and traveled the world. And for me as a child, it meant there was a world out there. There was a world ready to explore, and it was possible. When I was 13, my mother got a job as a house mother. She went for an interview for a house mother at this school. It was founded in 1779 by the Quakers. It had been a foundling hospital before, but then they founded this school. It was co-ed, and continues to be a school in East Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, I should say, and it was life-changing. I'd been destined to leave school at the end of year 10. And so being given this opportunity was extraordinary. My mum went to this interview for a house mother and came out the phys ed teacher. She'd been a PTI in the WAF. She had no qualifications. She herself had left school at 13. She eventually became the coordinator for the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme of the northeast of England. So, she was a bit of a driver. And so she held my shoulders the morning I went into school and said, grasp the nettle with both hands and never let it go. And as I went in, it was just, I could talk about it till you turn to dust. It was an extraordinary experience. It's so Harry Potter. The flagstones down the main corridor, worn by the footsteps of time from the 1700s. We wore navy blue cloaks down to the ground. I thought I was so cool. But I met there three people who changed my life and inspired me enormously. My physics, my maths, and my chemistry teacher. Extraordinary people who dedicated their lives to teaching in a way that it was extraordinary. And I think now when my kids have met a great teacher, it's always inspiring, it's always amazing to be in that position. And it gave me the opportunity to go to med school, because it gave me the opportunity to do my equivalent of TE, my A-levels, and so off I went. And when I was at med school, I knew I had to make my CV different from my friends because I was one of 12 women in my year. I was the only one who wanted to do surgery, and so I had to give myself a chance. And so I did a BMed Sci in anthropology and neuroanatomy. And as a part of that, I went to the Hunterian Museum at the Royal College of Surgeons of London. If you ever go to London and go to one museum, go there. It's just awesome. Anyway, I went there and looked at the brains, biggest collection of brains in the world at the time, from elephants to worms, and there I saw these pictures. I thought, oh my goodness. When my daughter was 18, we went to the museum. I went to the Royal College of Surgeons. They weren't going to let me in because I hadn't paid my dues for 20 years, but they let me in because she was a med student. And I went specifically to show her this, and the picture and the artist's drawings around it. So people can inspire you that you know, people inspire that you never meet because they're in history, but they're still inspirational. Can you imagine the intellect and the skill and the determination that could build these faces of these young men whose lives have been changed so radically in that desperate situation of the First World War? Extraordinary. I then went on to be a young registrar and started trying to figure out my path, and I came across another extraordinarily aspiring individual, Sir Archibald Mackingdoe, who set up the Guinea Pig Club he was actually the nephew of Harold Gillies in the first image. And so they're both Kiwis, and he had set up this Burns service and Burns reconstructive service in East Grinstead, in south of London, and took all the Air Force personnel, Allied forces as well, and brought them together. But he drove the program of holistic care. It wasn't just about what you look like, it's how you function. And I found myself there in 1985. And it was almost like you could hear Vera Lynn singing coming in on a wing and a prayer. You know, the flying jackets were still hung behind the door on the Nissen huts. It was still Nissen huts. And so it was an extraordinary environment to be in and extraordinarily inspirational. And trying to gain that energy from wherever you can as you go forward is so important. And so then you start to think about things, about the questions that are put forward to you, and this dogma and the statements and everybody's opinion. And I used to say to my mother on rude occasions, just because you say it, Mum, doesn't make it fact. And she'd go, ooh. Well, I said, opinions are really important, Mum, but facts, now they're rare. And I think in our space, in health and medicine and delivery medicine, opinions are out there. They're just in tsunamis of opinions, but facts. Find a fact and you hold on to it, because you can build out from it, and you can build the evidence base we need. And then you have to hold on tight. You have to hold that nettle in both hands and not let it go as it's buffeted by those opinions along the way. And so this is just an example of the first publication I ever wrote. It was from the Sheraton School of Physiology, where I was a registrar in St. Thomas's at the time, and I went to it was my med school, and I went to the physiology department because I had a problem. I had a question. We've been told that the tissue expansion is a fantastic technique. You can see here on the bottom a young girl who's had a scald injury to her scalp. The scar is such that the hair's not growing. And we can put balloons underneath the normal skin and expand that skin to create flaps so that we can close the defect with the skin appropriate for the recipient site. And this is a fantastic technique. It just started as I was coming through in the 70s and 80s. And so we were told that the neural integrity would be damaged. And with this, the stretch and the growth of those flaps, you would never be able to feel them again. Now I just thought, really? Really, is that true? Subsequently, I did 2-point discrimination on my pregnant abdomen 6 times, and it's not true. But at this time, in the Sheraton School of Physiology, and again, for the youngsters in the room, if you want to do something, just keep asking, keep asking, keep asking. And I eventually got Dow Corning, who were the biggest company in silicone breast implants at the time, to make me a tissue expander the size of my fingernail to go into a rat so that I could expand the skin. And then under the microscope systems, I could do single axon recordings of T11 of that skin. And I demonstrated for the first time that there was neural plasticity within the skin construct. It was exciting because I don't get out much. But anyway, and so there we were. And I just think it's so important. One, that you don't let these things go and you drive them home. And two, that you never forget them. And I'll come back to that. So I set off. This is a child I met at East Grinstead when I met many of the Guinea Pig Club. Those Second World War young men who now were very much old men, whose lives had changed, but they'd lived good lives. And then I saw this child. And I thought, my goodness me, we've got to be able to do better than that. How about regeneration? And so this started me on a path which I am still treading. At the moment, we're working with a group of people in Edinburgh and Kentucky on a spiny mouse. The spiny mouse has just been characterized, first published in 2012, and it is the only mammal known that regenerates its skin. Not just its skin, its bone, muscle, liver, kidneys, lung, heart, brain, nervous system. It is a completely regenerative animal model that lives longer than standard mice and is actually resistant to cancer. Fascinating. So maybe we have the window opening into the world of mammals regenerating as opposed to axolotls, as you see here. So it's keeping the long game is important. But this is where it started, and trying to understand how we could facilitate regeneration was so important. It drove me, it still drives me, it still gets me up every morning. Some point in the future, we will facilitate regeneration. So then I arrive here. I arrived here in 1987 on a November day. And I look at this, and I woke up my husband and said, wake up, wake up. He goes, what's the matter? I said, it's sunny. We can't miss a sunny day. And he goes, there'll be 360 more of them. Oh my gosh, where have I come to? And so there I was. The only person I knew of in plastic and reconstructive surgery before I left the UK, where I'd been fast-tracked through a path and was actually really going in a very sort of accelerated pathway, was Harold McComb. And when I got here, I was told at Royal Perth, I went to Royal Perth, Thursday I arrived, Sunday we found a house, Monday we got the forms for the mortgage, Tuesday I was in Royal Perth, and I was told that a mother with 2 children couldn't do a plastics registrar job and they'd given it to someone else. And so I went to Charlie Gardner's, where Prof. House was there, and he'd asked my husband to apply for 2 jobs, which we thought was strange at the time. But then I went back into general surgery for my first year here in Perth. And at the time, I was incensed and overwhelmed with, but again, I will tell you, you only waste your time if you choose to waste it. It made an enormous difference to me to be connected with the Perth system, to be connected broader than plastic surgery. I met people, I learned things. I am hungry to learn. When the youngsters come to me and say, I didn't get my choice of my rotation, I said, you'll only waste it if you choose to. You can learn something from everybody. Stop your whinging and get on and deliver the service that we are paid to deliver. And make sure you come out at the other end of this 3 months, 6 months, a better doctor, a better person with more knowledge. And hopefully more questions. So it's something that you can't actually just whinge your way through. You've just got to tackle it. And I met Harold McComb, as I said, and I went between things, and whenever I could, I went to Bethesda to watch somebody who is an exquisite technician. He was a cleft lip and palate surgeon. He was the International Society president at one time. But he was an exquisite technician, and I learnt an enormous amount from him in his private practice in Bethesda, with no interest at all in ever doing private plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, but the capacity to learn was always something that was really important to me on every level. And I learnt something that has been fundamental in my development. Learn something every day to make tomorrow better. It can be small, it can be big, but don't waste the opportunity of learning on a daily basis. And that can be exhausting at times, and that's why investing in teams becomes so important. So in 1991, I became the director of the burns service of Western Australia at Royal Perth and the PMH, now at PCH and Fish. And yeah, it was the Friday I was the registrar, Monday I was the boss. And I was told it wasn't unanimous. It was, at the time, there were 6 plastic surgeons working at Royal Perth, and it was 5 to 1. I said, well, at least one of you is honest, because they said I didn't have enough experience. and so there I was. I had the opportunity to change things in a way that I was chomping at the bit. I had ideas on how things could be different, and you will meet patients as well who will change your life. This young man changed my life. It was the 1st of October 1992 in the emergency department of Royal Perth Hospital. He had 92% body surface area burn injury. He was 29. He'd been helping his friend. He was a high school science teacher. He was helping his friend in a roofing contracting business in Rockingham, and a generator exploded. He had first aid. He was hosed down. He went to Rockingham. He met in Rockingham a senior registrar in anaesthetics who'd come from East Grinstead, who was trained in burns. He was perfectly resuscitated, and he came to Royal Perth. It was 1 o'clock at lunchtime, and I was expected, if we were to palliate anyone, it was a consultant decision. At the time, I was the only one, so it had to be me to make that decision. And I went and I looked and I said, nah, we're going to do this. Because by then, we'd already explored the whole idea of growing skin. In 1990, we'd done the first case at Royal Perth, when I was a registrar at Charlie's, actually. And I'd coerced everybody, including the CEO of Ansett Airlines, to fund the skin to be sent from the patient to Melbourne and be sent back. That particular occasion didn't have a positive outcome, because the patient had been in intensive care for some months before we did the procedure. We got complete healing, but lost the patient with mycetoma, a fungal infection in the right heart, from which we couldn't resuscitate at 5 months post-injury. But it had been a learning that was defining. However bad I felt about it, I understood how the relatives of this patient would be infinitely worse. And I understood that I had to give them hope that others would survive because of the learnings of that time. And so we sent the skin to Melbourne, and we grew enough to cover the 92% the body surface area that was burnt, including his face. Doesn't it look amazing? and so and on the 16th of December, I walked in the room, he was fully healed. 1st of October, 16th of December, yes, we can do this. And he said, I've got some problem, I can't move. I can't move my hands. I'm in pain, it hurts. He developed polyneuropathy of the critically ill and became totally paralyzed. And he developed heterotopic ossification of his elbows and shoulders. He was transferred to Shen Park Rehab. And I went to Preveley camping and said I'd never do this again because it was far too hard. And my husband said, well, did you do your best? I said, yeah. And I said, I called in so many favors to do this. You know, I slept in the hall. I would go home, put the kids to bed, and then come back and sleep in the anteroom in intensive care so they didn't turn him off at night. And it was kind of emotionally charged, to say the least, yeah? And eventually he got over the hump, and he got out of intensive care, and I go, there you go. Yeah, I don't have to sleep in here anymore. And I developed relationships with the intensive care guys that were second to none. because we all got behind this, all vested. And so when this happened, I thought, I just can't do this. But as he pointed out, only anything anyone could do is your best. So, stop your whinging and get on with it. And so I came back after the weekend camping, and this is the photograph taken as he was discharged 9 months later. You notice the position of his right wrist. He's a missionary in New Guinea now, but he never regained his capacity to extend his right wrist. Everything else was fine, eventually. But it was another interesting story because it's this nervous system business and the nervous system with the skin. And I'm going a little bit out of sync here, but the drive to understand the nexus between burns and the brain led me to meet Professor Lynn Beasley. And we held workshops with international visitors on burns meets brains. And we're still researching this area, and I've got new information of young children burnt before the age of 3, when we MRI scan them at 10 to 16, compared to non-burnt friends they bring along to the functional MRI scanner. They're abnormal. And these are kids with no physical scars. So that's another story for later. I could talk to you all day till you turn to dust. And so then the ReCell system was born out of that. We were sending skin to Melbourne for the first 12 patients. It took 3 weeks. With the transport on either side, it was a bit 3.5. I could not wait 3.5 weeks. By 1993, with the telethon grant, we were able to start our own lab, Marie Stoner and myself. I met Marie in the bone marrow laboratories here at Royal Perth, and we were able to come together and work out how to grow skin cells in 10 days, because if it's not available in 10 days, it's not clinically useful, because if a burn wound heals in 10 days, you've got a 4% chance of scarring. If it's 21 days, it's 75% chance of scarring. We've got to close down this time frame. Before the year was out, we closed it down from 10 days to 5 days by delivering it as a suspension. We started with our experiments to understand the cell adhesion characteristics were different. When there were individual cells, they hung on better, blistered less. And so then we realized our bigger patients, where we were expanding the cells in the laboratory, had a better scar outcome than our traditional split thickness skin grafts in the smaller cases. Then we worked out how to take the tissue engineering, absolute bare bones, put it in a box, and take it to the bedside. I'd say that in less than 10 seconds. It took me 15 years. But anyway. I look at that and I think, how did a young surgeon and a young scientist develop that? Well, it was people. We met Go Medical. George O'Neill set up a company for medical devices, and they helped us with the electronics. CSL helped us with the enzyme. A team out at Welshpool did the plastic moulding for us, and so on it went. And then there was only one place in the world we could find to bring it all together and sterilize it, and that was Ventrix, California. There was nowhere in Australia, nowhere. We went to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and at that time, because this was the 1990s, that's the only place. And so, as you can see, our speciality of the house is pediatric scalds. 80% of our pediatric cases have no visible scar. And long-term follow-up matters. We built a burns information management system with a Microsoft grant here in 2005-06. We've got lots of data on our patients, and following up matters. And this is a young girl I recently saw in 23 years later. And so she had that nevus removed, and I took skin from her groin. The skin from your groin is a different color. And so I dermabraided, leaving tiny little islands of the different color so that she's got freckles to match the other side. And so making sure that these things actually happen, turn out the way you think, really matters. So that long-term follow-up really matters. And being curious all the time, staying curious really is fundamental. And so I think I'll leave you with this story. I met a young boy in 2003. He had an 80% body surface area burn. He was one of our, we delivered what we thought was the very best care in the world. He had everything thrown at him. He healed quickly. He was on outdoor ed camp, riding horses, paddling his kayak, sending us postcards. And then he came back to clinic, and as I walked across the room, I could see he had a mass in his liver from the other side of the room. I thought, what is that? It had already metastasized to his sacrum. And as an 11-year-old, he succumbed to hepatocellular carcinoma. He had no risk factors for such a problem. And so I asked the question. We presented the case clearly as a case report to flush out, has major burn, suffering a major burn, or actually the things we do to ensure survival have caused this problem. And so a couple of the old guys like myself said, yeah, I have a case like that, I have a case like that. But basically, linking in with the people around you, again, is really important. West Australian data linkage is second to none. When you can access the data. No, I'm just kidding, because now it's really sweet. With people WA, it's really sweet. But at this point in time, it was quite a challenge, because by 2009, we had the NHMRC grant, and we linked 34,000 patients requiring hospitalisation for burn injury, so a significant injury, and with 120,000 comparators, age, sex, geospatial and socioeconomic comparators. And we found that, yes, in fact, if you had a burn at any point in your life, you had a change in your life trajectory. And if you cut the data through at 15 years of age, the excess deaths were related a third to cancer, and not skin cancer, but all cancers, a third to infection, and a third to other injuries. If you cut the data through at 65, there was about 60% cardiovascular disease related, and then 30% or so cancer, and then odds and sods in between. And so this was real. We linked with Aberdeen and made sure it was real by doubling the data set. But the shocking thing about this was 96% of the children and 84% of the adults were not major burns. So what's going on here? We started looking at ICD codes, and wherever we looked, infection, diabetes, musculoskeletal, increased risk of fractures, gastrointestinal. Everywhere we looked, we saw unmasking the diseases of aging, and we saw serious problems. But why? I don't know the answer to the why, but right now we've developed biobanks, both in the adults and the children's hospital. We link with the cohort studies, Origins, Rain, to try and work out how we can analyze our specimens and compare with them. We've done some preliminary analysis in the pediatric cohort, and we can see that they've got lipidomic changes that are in line with cardiovascular disease. They have a bioprofile that is similar to seen in early Parkinson's, and they have vaccine amnesia. And so we are in the weeds. I'm learning about immunology and all sorts. Biochemistry was something I really didn't like at medical school, but I've met Elaine Holmes, who's the Phenome Centre, and I'm really getting into the weeds with the biochemistry business, because it is that fundamental biochemistry and cell drivers that is, I think, going to give us the answer. And so I guess it's, again, this linking with people all the way through. And one of the people that I'd like to acknowledge is Mark Fear. Mark Fear unfortunately passed 4 months ago at 51. He was in a tragic accident, was hit by a car. I'd worked with him for almost 20 years. As Marie moved on, Mark came into that space, and we grew together. We grew to the point where we had got such big plans of how we were going to drive the regeneration with the spiny mouse, drive the neurological research to understand the nexus between the burns and brain. And when we were in Edinburgh, not long before he passed, we were in a situation listening to unusual animal models because we were there for the spiny mouse. And then we were sort of just sitting back with the life washing over us as somebody started presenting the physiology of hibernation. Mammals who do not produce urine for 3 months but don't get renal failure, who wake up without osteoporosis and sarcopenia, and we're on the edge of our seats by the end of the talk. Whoa, we've got another avenue to pursue. And the curiosity and the energy of Mark is something I will sorely miss, and a whole lot of what we've been able to do should be dedicated to him. So the people around you building the teams matters, because to do better every day is hard work, and sometimes it's hard when things don't go right. When an experiment's not right is one thing, but when somebody doesn't survive, it's a whole different ballgame. And if investing in that team means that on those days you've got each other to build and push you all up and move forward once again. And Bali was a particularly defining time. The window to our world opened. We'd been beavering away for a long time, and all of a sudden our window to our world opened and people wanted to know what we were doing. And at 3 weeks we had an exchange of all patients going backwards and forwards to Germany, over into the state, and people coming back. And one of the nurses on the ward gave me this written in a card, and I'm going to read it to you because I think it encompasses a lot of what we should be thinking about, really, as health professionals. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish little clot of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. Wow, yeah. Harder you work, the more you live. Let's get to this. Yeah, I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It's sort of a splendid torch which I've got a hold of for the moment, and I want to make burn as brightly as possible before handing on to future generations. I haven't got another 30 years, guys. Let's get on with things. You know, I want the results. You know, so it's important to pass on your passion. I don't know what motivation is, but I know it's contagious. Sharing our passion, linking with positive energy. Criticism without engagement in problem solving is negative energy, walk on by. Do not engage, not worth your oxygen. Criticism with engagement in problem solving is life's blood, because people survive this. Can you imagine the pain and suffering involved? It's extraordinary. It is our privilege and our duty to do for these people the best we possibly can. So, linking with everyone around us and getting that energy from people who've been trodden before, the shoulders of giants who've gone before, people next to you, people doing all sorts of different things. Enjoy the experience of the journey, because there's absolutely no doubt when you're happy and passionate and you're enjoying what you do, you'll do better. And so find something that gets you up in the morning such that you enjoy what you do. And I think the fundamental to all this is to believe that, in fact, this isn't as good as it gets, not criticism of today, but because we should be building. We should be building for tomorrow. And so I'll leave you, like, my life has taken many different turns. And in 2005, I was asked if I'd be Australian of the Year. And I go, my God, there must be so many other people who could do this. Having asked others, and they looked at me like I was a bit mad, right? And I go, oh, okay then, right, yeah. and they said, well, the other two questions, one funny and one not so funny. One, I was walking up the stage on that day to get the trophy from John Howard. The CEO of the Australia Day Council said, you are Australian, aren't you? And I go, lad, no, does it matter? In my best Yorkshire accent. He went completely white. I thought I was going to have to resuscitate him in front of all these people. And I said, just kidding. But I was asked, what is it that I wanted to share with Australia? And I kind of touched along it today. I believe we're here for purpose, to do our job the very best, to bring our A game to the table, and then reflect at the end of the day on how to do it again tomorrow. To bring our energy and our intellect. We are exquisitely privileged to have the education and training that's brought us into this room. We can't waste it. And so using that is something that I think is, and sharing it is so valuable. And so I figured that making decisions, personal decisions about your health, your wellness, your education, will change the health budget. If you all know that clean, cool running water for 20 minutes, 15 to 18 degrees, in the first 3 hours post-burn injury, will influence the scar one for life, will reduce the level of that injury. There's loads of science behind it. You're all now going to change the health budget because we have demonstrated that that reduces length of stay, incidence of surgery, and infection on 14,000 people. Yeah? So we know education matters. We know decisions you make personally will influence not just yourself, but will influence those around you. And we have a responsibility to make sure those are good ones for the people who come behind us. I think sometimes we're in a very austere environment for lots of reasons. And I've often said, keep something of the best of you for those who care most for you. Sometimes it's hard. I remember coming outside the house. I've been in theatre all day. I was so tired, my bones hurt. Standing at the front door and hearing the noise on the inside. It's like, oh my God. Nobody asked me to do this. And just like, here we go. Hi guys, it's showtime. Keeping something of the best of you for those who care most for you, because they're there when you need those pieces to be picked up, like I did in Preveley in 1992. Thank you very much indeed.